My husband forgave my affair. Then he served me papers on our anniversary. I thought the postnup was a fresh start. I didn't realize it was a trap. He didn't want to save the marriage, he wanted to save his fortune. My husband toasted to our second chance with a glass of 1996 Dom Perignon. The bubbles caught the light of the crystal chandelier above us, dancing like little diamonds in the flute. He looked me in the eye, smiled that rare, tight smile of his, and said, "To contracts properly executed." I clinked my glass against his. I thought he was being romantic. I thought he was celebrating us. I didn't realize that the blue envelope resting next to the silver champagne bucket wasn't an anniversary card. It was an eviction notice. My name is Layla Bennett. I am 28 years old. I used to be the wife of Walter Bennett, one of the most feared contract attorneys in Chicago. I used to live in a penthouse overlooking the lake, where the clouds felt close enough to touch. I used to drive a G-Wagon that cost more than most people's college education. Now I live in a studio apartment in a neighborhood where I have to carry pepper spray just to walk to the bodega on the corner. I drive a 10-year-old Honda with a cracked windshield that I can't afford to fix. And I have learned the hardest lesson of my life: when a shark smiles at you, he isn't being friendly. He's just showing you his teeth before he bites. To understand how I lost everything, you have to understand the man who took it from me. You have to understand Walter. Walter was 36 when he destroyed me. He wasn't just a lawyer, he was a fixer. He didn't argue in court, he destroyed people in quiet, air-conditioned conference rooms. He wrote the contracts that corporations use to avoid liability when their products hurt people. He wrote the prenups for professional athletes that ensured their ex-wives got nothing but a used car and a gag order. He viewed the world as a series of clauses. Life wasn't about love or fate, it was about leverage. Who has it, and who is desperate enough to sign it away? I remember once, early in our marriage, I met him at his office for lunch. He was finishing a negotiation with a construction firm owner who was trying to back out of a deal. The man was crying. He was begging Walter, saying the contract would bankrupt his family business, that his father had built it from the ground up. Walter didn't even look up from his paperwork. He just tapped a paragraph on page 34 with his mauve blank pen. "You signed right here, Mr. Henderson," Walter said, his voice devoid of empathy, steady as a heartbeat. "Your tears are not a force majeure event. The contract stands. Have your assets ready for liquidation by Monday." Walter was a machine. And for 5 years, I was his favorite accessory. I met him when I was 23. I was a hostess at a high-end steakhouse in the Gulf Coast. He was the regular who sat in booth 4, tipped $100, and never looked at the menu. He ordered the ribeye, medium rare, and a double scotch, neat. I was beautiful, broke, and ambitious. He was powerful, rich, and detached. I thought I had won the lottery. I thought I had landed the big fish. I didn't realize I was the bait. We got married 6 months later. There was a prenup, of course. Walter explained it over dinner like he was explaining the wine list. "It's standard, Layla. It protects my premarital assets. But it has a sunset clause. If we stay married for 5 years, you vest. You become entitled to 30% of the estate. 10 years, 50%. Walter called it vesting. I called it security. I looked at the 5-year mark like a finish line. I thought, just make it to 5 years, and you're set for life. But the race was exhausting. Walter worked 80 hours a week. Our marriage was a series of scheduled appearances. Charity galas on Thursdays. Dinner with clients on Saturdays. Sundays he spent in his study with the door closed. I lived in a golden cage. I had an unlimited credit card, a personal shopper, and a calendar full of luncheons with other wives who hated their husbands. I was bored out of my mind. The silence in that penthouse was deafening. I was lonely. And I felt entitled to something more. Something real. 2 years ago, I met a man named Julian. He was an artist. He had a studio in Pilsen that smelled like turpentine and cheap weed. He was broke, passionate, and everything Walter wasn't. He looked at me like I was art, not an asset. We had a fling that lasted 3 months. It was sloppy. I was sloppy. I thought Walter was too busy earning millions to notice his wife was drifting. I was wrong. I got caught in the most embarrassing way possible. I left my iPad unlocked on the kitchen island. I went to take a shower. When I came back downstairs, drying my hair with a towel, Walter was sitting at the island. He was scrolling through my messages with Julian. The air in the penthouse was freezing. I stopped on the stairs. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I thought, this is it. He's going to divorce me. The 5 years aren't up. I'm going to lose everything. But Walter didn't scream. He didn't throw my clothes off the balcony. He didn't act like a heartbroken husband. He acted like a lawyer discovering a breach of warranty. He sat me down in his study. The leather chair felt cold against my skin. He poured 2 glasses of scotch. Layla, he said, his voice calm, almost professional. You have breached the marital contract. Infidelity is a fundamental violation of the terms of trust. I know, I sobbed, shaking. I'm so sorry, Walter. Please. It was a mistake. I was lonely. I'll do anything. Don't leave me. I expected him to serve me papers right there. He could have destroyed me then. I would have walked away with a small settlement, maybe enough for a condo in the suburbs, but the G-Wagon life would be over. But Walter surprised me. He leaned back in his chair and tented his fingers. I don't want a divorce, Layla, he said. Divorce is messy. It's public. It affects my reputation at the firm. Clients don't like instability. I want to work this out. I looked up, hope flooding my chest. It felt like a miracle. You do? Yes, he said. But we need a new framework. The old trust is broken. We need a new contract to rebuild it. He opened a drawer and slid a document across the mahogany desk. It was thick. Bound in blue paper. Post-nuptial agreement. What is this? I asked, wiping my tears. It's a second chance agreement, Walter explained, his voice soothing. It resets the terms. It says that I forgive you for the past. We wipe the slate clean regarding Julian. We stay married. You keep your lifestyle. You keep the credit cards. You keep the car. But? I asked, sensing the trap but too desperate to avoid it. But, Walter said, tapping the paper with his long blade pen. We need a deterrent. A guarantee that this won't happen again. He flipped to page 12. If you cheat again, Layla, if there is any evidence of infidelity, emotional or physical, whatsoever, the terms change. If you breach this new contract, the original prenup is void. You get 0 alimony. 0 assets. You vacate the marital home within 24 hours. You walk away with only your personal effects. He looked at me, his blue eyes unreadable. If you are truly sorry, and if you truly want to be with me, this shouldn't be a problem. Because you're never going to cheat again, right? I looked at the document. The words total forfeiture jumped out at me. It felt heavy. It felt dangerous. But I looked at Walter's face. He looked sincere. He looked like a man trying to protect his heart. And I looked around the beautiful study, at the life I didn't want to lose. I'll sign it, I said. I promise, Walter. I'll never hurt you again. I signed it. He notarized it right there in the study with his official stamp. The sound of the stamper hitting the paper echoed like a gunshot. He kissed me on the forehead. Good. Now let's go to dinner. I thought I had dodged a bullet. I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. I didn't know that Walter Bennett doesn't rely on luck. He relies on traps. For the next year, everything was perfect. Better than perfect. It was eerie. Walter was more attentive. He came home for dinner twice a week. He bought me jewelry, diamond earrings, a Cartier bracelet. He took me on a 2-week vacation to Cabo, staying in a private villa. He seemed to genuinely forgive me. I relaxed. I let my guard down. I started to believe that the post-nup was just a piece of paper in a drawer, a formality to make him feel secure. I thought he loved me enough to look past my mistake. But a leopard doesn't change its spots, and a bored trophy wife doesn't suddenly find fulfillment in arranging flowers. The attention from Walter faded after 6 months, and he went back to his 80-hour weeks. About 11 months after signing the post-nup, just 1 month before our 5-year anniversary, I met Jackson. Jackson was my personal trainer at the Equinox downtown. He was 25. He had muscles on his muscles. He called me goddess while I did squats. I told myself I wouldn't do it. I remembered the blue folder in Walter's desk. But the temptation gnawed at me. And then, the arrogance set in. Walter is busy, I thought. He's working on the merger with the Japanese tech firm. He barely looks at me. And besides, I'm smarter now. I learned from Julia. I decided to treat the affair like a covert operation. I bought a burner phone with cash at a Walmart 3 towns over. I stored it in the spare tire well of my G-Wagon. I never texted Jackson from my main phone. We never met at the gym. We never met at hotels in the city where people might recognize me. I would drive my car to a sprawling mall parking lot in the suburbs, park it between 2 delivery trucks, and get into Jackson's beat-up Ford Explorer. We would drive to motels in Indiana, across the state line. Sad, roadside places with flickering neon signs where no one knew who Walter Bennett was. I paid for the rooms in cash. I wore baseball caps and oversized sunglasses. I felt like a spy. I felt exhilarated. I told myself, there is no paper trail. No texts. No credit card charges. Walter can't prove anything. I underestimated him. God, I underestimated him. I didn't realize that you don't need a paper trail when you have surveillance. Then came the night of the vesting date. Our 5th anniversary. Walter planned a massive celebration. A black-tie gala dinner at the Langham. He rented out the grand ballroom. He invited his partners, his biggest clients, the mayor, and all of my friends, the other wives who I secretly competed with. I bought a $5,000 silver sequin dress that fit like a second skin. I got my hair and makeup done by a celebrity stylist. I felt invincible. I felt like the Queen of Chicago. The night was magical. The chandeliers sparkled. A 10-piece orchestra played soft jazz. Walter was the perfect host, his hand on the small of my back, guiding me through the room, accepting congratulations. We sat down at the head table for dinner. The waiter poured the Dom Perignon into crystal flutes. Walter stood up. He tapped his glass with a silver spoon. The room went silent. 200 faces turned toward us. Friends, colleagues, Walter began, his voice booming and confident. Thank you for coming to celebrate with us. 5 years. In my line of work, 5 years is a long time. Most contracts don't last that long without amendment. People chuckled politely. Layla, he said, turning to me, raising his glass. You have taught me so much over these 5 years. You've taught me about risk. About the fragile nature of trust. And most importantly, about the necessity of verifying your assets before you invest fully. He smiled. It was a cold, practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. I have a gift for you, my dear. It's not jewelry this time. It's something structural. Something that represents the true foundation of our marriage. He reached under the table. I expected a Tiffany blue box. Instead, he pulled out a blue legal folder. The exact same shade of blue as the post-nup I had signed in his study a year ago. He handed it to me across the table. I froze. The room was watching, smiling, expecting a romantic gesture. I forced a smile that felt tight on my face. Oh, Walter. You shouldn't have. Open it, he said. His voice was hard now. I opened the folder. My hands were shaking. The first page wasn't a deed to a vacation home. It wasn't stock certificates. It was a photograph. A high-resolution, 4K photograph taken with a long-range telephoto lens. It showed me, wearing my baseball cap and sunglasses, locked in a passionate kiss with Jackson. We were standing in the parking lot of a Motel 6 in Gary, Indiana, next to his beat-up Ford Explorer. The timestamp in the corner read, October 14th, 2:15 p.m. Just last week. My breath stopped. The world tilted on its axis. The champagne turned to acid in my stomach. I flipped the page, desperate for it to be a mistake. Another photo. Jackson and I sharing a cigarette outside a roadside diner. Another photo. Me handing Jackson a wad of cash. And then, the document. Notice of breach of contract and immediate eviction. I looked up at Walter. His eyes were dead. There was no anger. Just satisfaction. The satisfaction of a lawyer who has just delivered the kill shot in a deposition. What is this? I whispered, my voice trembling so badly I could barely speak. That, Walter said, loud enough for the tables around us to hear, is Exhibit B. It proves indisputably that you have violated Clause 4.2 of the postnuptial agreement you signed 11 months ago. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to an icy murmur. Clause 4.2 triggers the total forfeiture protocol. You have breached the contract, Layla. The marriage is terminated immediately for cause. Walter, please, I hissed, grabbing his arm. Not here. Not in front of everyone. Let's talk outside. He pulled his arm away. You didn't care about outside when you were screwing your trainer in Indiana. We are finishing this here. He checked his diamond-encrusted Rolex. Per the agreement you signed, and I suggest you reread page 12, you have 24 hours to vacate the marital residence. However, since I knew you would breach, I took the liberty of accelerating the timeline. Your bags were packed this afternoon while you were at the salon getting ready for tonight. They are currently in the lobby with the doorman. He pulled a plastic key card from his tuxedo pocket and dropped it onto the white tablecloth next to my champagne glass. It made a cheap, plastic sound. I booked you a room for tonight at the Motel 6 in Gary. Since you seem to find the accommodations there so agreeable. He turned to the waiter, who was standing there, mortified. Check, please. I couldn't breathe. The whispers started around the room. I saw the wives I had socialized with covering their mouths in shock, but I could see the glee in their eyes. The downfall of a rival is always entertaining. I ran. I grabbed my purse and ran out of the ballroom, my heels clicking frantically on the marble floors. I burst through the lobby doors, past the doorman who was standing next to 4 Louis Vuitton suitcases that held my entire life. I didn't go to Gary that night. I was too humiliated. I hailed a cab and told him to drive to a Hyatt near the airport. I pulled out my emergency credit card. Declined, the receptionist said 5 minutes later. Try it again, I begged. It says reported stolen, she said. Walter had moved fast. He had cancelled everything before the dessert was served. I ended up sleeping in the lobby of my friend's apartment building until she came down and told me her husband wouldn't let me stay because he did business with Walter. The days that followed were a blur of legal jargon and reality checks. I finally found a divorce lawyer who agreed to meet with me, mostly out of curiosity. He was a shark, too. But when he saw the postnup and the photos, he just sighed and took off his glasses. He played you, Layla, the lawyer said. What do you mean? I cheated. I know I messed up. No, you don't understand. Walter Bennett is a contract attorney. He knows the law better than anyone in this city. When he caught you the first time, with Julian, he could have divorced you. But under your original prenup, you might have fought for a settlement. It would have been messy. Public. The lawyer tapped the blue folder. So he created this. He gave you a second chance. But he never intended to stay married to you. He knew you. He profiled you like an opposing witness. He knew you would cheat again. He baited me? He waited, the lawyer corrected. I checked the dates on the PI report in the discovery file. Walter hired the private investigator the day after you signed this postnup. He had you under total surveillance for 12 months. He spent probably $50,000 on private investigators. Why? I asked, horrified. Why wait a whole year? Why buy me jewelry and take me on vacation? Because of the 5-year vesting date, the lawyer said. If he divorced you before the 5-year mark, you got nothing anyway. But he wanted to be sure. He wanted you to feel safe. He wanted you to get sloppy. He let you run up the meter on your own destruction right up to the finish line. So I get nothing? You get what you signed for, the lawyer said, closing the file. 0. You waived your right to alimony. You waived your claim to the house. You waived your claim to his pension. You signed a document saying that if you cheated, you walk away naked. And then, you cheated. It's ironclad, Layla. I can't help you. But Walter wasn't content with just taking my future. He wanted to rewrite my past, too. I needed money. Desperately. I remembered the jewelry. The diamond earrings from our trip to Cabo. The Cartier bracelet from Christmas. I thought, at least I have these. These are worth $50,000, easy. I went to a pawn shop on State Street, keeping my sunglasses on so no one would recognize me. I laid out the jewelry on the counter. The pawnbroker looked at them under a loupe for 5 seconds and laughed. These are fakes, lady, he said, pushing them back. What? No, my husband bought them at Cartier. I saw the box. Your husband bought good replicas, he said. Or he bought the box on eBay. This is high-end cubic zirconia and gold plating. Worth maybe $500 for the lot. My knees buckled. Walter. He knew. He knew the whole time he was buying me gifts during our reconciliation year that he was just buying props for his play. He wasn't going to waste real diamonds on a liability. He was laughing at me every time I put them on. I tried to call my friends. I called the women I had lunched with for 5 years. I'm sorry, Layla, one of them said. But Walter is our lawyer. We can't be seen with you. It's complicated. I was toxic. I was kicked out of the club. I live in a studio apartment now. It smells like mildew and someone else's cooking. I had to sell the Louis Vuitton bags just to pay the deposit. I work as a receptionist at a dental office. I answer phones. I file paperwork. I make $18 an hour. I wasn't the only one he buried, though. If you think Walter stopped with me, you don't know Walter. He is a scorched earth kind of man. I felt guilty about Jackson. He was young, stupid, and caught in the crossfire. About 2 months after the divorce, I tried to find him. I wanted to apologize. I went to the Equinox where he used to work. Jackson doesn't work here anymore, the manager said coldly, blocking my path. And if you're Layla Bennett, you're banned from the premises. Please leave. I did some digging. I found Jackson working as a bouncer at a dive bar on the south side. It was a humiliating step down from being a celebrity trainer. I waited until his shift was over at 3 a.m. I walked up to him in the parking lot. Jackson? I said. He spun around. When he saw me, his face didn't soften. It twisted into pure, unadulterated fear. Get away from me, he hissed, backing up, holding his hands up like I was radioactive. Are you crazy? If he sees us talking. Who? Walter? Yes, Walter. Jackson shouted. Do you know what he did? He got you fired? He didn't just get me fired, Layla. He audited me. What? Jackson looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Walter Bennett sent a private investigator to look into my cash business. You know, the private training sessions? The cash payments you gave me? The ones we thought were secret? My stomach dropped. I never declared that cash, Jackson whispered. It was under the table. Walter compiled a file, dates, amounts, photos of the cash exchanges between us, and he sent it to the IRS. He reported me for tax fraud. I'm facing an audit and massive fines I can't pay. Oh my God. That's not all, Jackson continued, his voice shaking with rage and fear. He contacted the National Academy of Sports Medicine. He sent them proof that I was sleeping with a client, which is a violation of the ethics code. They revoked my certification. I can't train anyone, Layla. I'm blacklisted from every gym in the state. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. And then, he sued me. He sued you? Civil suit. Interference with contractual relations. He argued that I knowingly helped you breach your postnup, causing him financial distress. He buried me in legal fees. I had to declare bankruptcy last week. I lost my car. I lost my apartment. Jackson stepped closer, his eyes wild. You ruined my life, Layla. You and your psycho husband. Stay away from me. If I ever see you again, I'm calling the police. He ran to his rusted car and sped off into the night. I stood there in the cold parking lot, realizing the true scale of Walter's vengeance. He didn't just want to win the divorce. He wanted to salt the earth so nothing could ever grow there again. And what about the architect of my destruction? What about Walter? I see his name in the paper constantly. He's bigger than ever. The way he handled me became a legend in legal circles. Clients want the man who can execute a plan like that. I saw a picture of him at a gala recently. The same gala where he ended my life a year ago. He was with a new woman. She looked young. Maybe 24. She was beautiful, eager, and hanging on his every word. She looked at him like he was a savior. She was wearing diamond earrings. I wondered if they were real. I wanted to scream at the photo. I wanted to find her and shake her. Run, I wanted to say. He's not smiling at you because he loves you. He's smiling because he's drafting a clause in his head that you haven't read yet. I thought I was the player. I thought I could have my cake and eat it too. I thought I was smarter than the system. I didn't realize that when you sit down at the table with the devil, you don't read the menu. You read the fine print. I signed away my life for a second chance that was actually a death sentence. Hit like if you think Walter is a genius, or a psychopath. #the postnup trap.